Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Acsom Rabbani. Acsom, we try to gauge our positivity every Monday afternoon. Where's the gauge today?
It's as high as you can can imagine, as high as it probably was going into the Dortmund game. So
Yeah,
let's hope it's a different scenario this time. That was on the back of a 6-0 victory as well, wasn't it? But I think we all went into the weekend game thinking it was going to be a tight affair. I don't think anyone would have predicted what we ended up seeing. I think we knew we were capable of that. We spoke about the two each game at Celtic Park. That end of the day that could have gone similar if we'd got that third goal in that game. But I just think some of the football, the second half in particular, the other night, just ruthless, clinical, dominant, a real statement victory, which you felt that Brendan and the players really wanted. It wasn't just about getting through to the final for them. I felt like they wanted to put out a marker, and boy, did they do that.
you're talking there about ruthlessness. That is a word that springs to my mind. And I just think that, the first time round, when we look at Brendan Rodgers' tenure, Asim, you can almost split it into two. You can split it into the Brendan that arrived in a blaze of glory, and he's got 13,000 Celtic fans turning up
Yeah,
at Parkhead to welcome him in. The big speech, everything. And it rolled on. There was an invincible treble, etc. And then there came a point where the mood changed with Brendan, and that
yeah,
ruthlessness and that like first class top grade performance. I'm not going to say elite because people don't like that word. Um, that seemed to diminish slightly in the second part of his time here. It's almost been flipped. So he's came in this time round, and it's been a lot more low key because of the circumstances in which
yeah.
he left. Last season took us a while to get going. This season has been brilliant, other than that one blip against Dortmund, as you mentioned. But in terms of in a microcosm of a 90-minute game, I think what we've seen at the weekend was everything Brendan's working towards. And by the way, I don't even think he's happy in the
Yeah.
entirety of the performance. We'll get to the booking, slipping on his backsides and all this kind of stuff. But we'll start off. Listen, this is a positive show. We'll start off with the scenes behind you, Asim. And
Yeah.
again, great job by the Ultras who chanted all day long, as we would expect from them. They're not going to be allowed to use the pyro on Tuesday night, though, are they?
No, we Brendan spoke about that, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago as well? Just the pyros. Look, it looks great. It was a brilliant occasion. You were there as well on Saturday. The atmosphere was incredible. But if we're going to get punished for it, and it's going to lead to fans not being able to go to away games or things like that, then we have to be careful, and we have to make sure that we're not giving them an excuse to disadvantage us, because like the fans are a huge part of Champions League nights. So yeah, but if we talk about Saturday, there the atmosphere, the noise, the occasion, everything was just perfect. I like the 5:30 kickoff for these games. I think it adds to the atmosphere. And just a real joyous, the singing at half time reminded me of I think it was the cup final against Rangers a couple of years ago. It was just non-stop noise. It was brilliant. But when you talk about Brendan there, you're right. There's an aura about him when he's in a good place, and when the club's in a good place, you just get a completely different Brendan, don't you? You can see it in his interviews, his stuff after the match on Premier Sports. I thought he was a great listen as well. Like you said, we'll get onto the comedy side of the booking, but there's even more. There's more of a take home from that as well, in the sense that, like you said, he wasn't fully happy at 3-0 up. So
No.
that just shows you the demands and the standards that he's wanting on this club to get to, and you know what, the players fully delivered, because anything he wasn't happy about at half time, the second half was perfection.
You know this, I always think about the great controlling football managers, those that wanted ultimate control at the football clubs that they were at. Obviously, our very own Jock Stein was one of those types of coaches. Asim, and when you speak to anybody that worked with him, they tell you that. It was all
Yeah,
about control, and if you didn't kind of toe the line or play or train or conduct yourself in the way that he wanted you to, you wouldn't be part of it. And I think you look down the line of great football managers who have done that, and it doesn't suit everybody in any workplace to have a manager who is so on top of
yeah,
absolutely everything. That meticulous approach to the game, always seeking out perfection, probably knowing that it's unachievable. But that moment where he slipped on his backside, we had a laugh at it, and he did as well. And then he gets booked. We'll come back to that. I don't think that was the biggest issue. How on earth can Brendan Rodgers get booked and Nielsen of Aberdeen not get booked in the game is beyond me. But it was because he was frustrated. He kind of lost his rag a wee bit. Saw red mist, which is appropriate at the moment. Yes. And he's booted the ball away, right, and just fell on his backside. But at that point, I think maybe 2 or 3 times, right in front of him, actually, 2 or 3 times, we were sloppy with the passing. And he just wasn't having it, wasn't it? He's not. I think what we've got is we've got that Brendan who, who's laser focused, which he was like that when he first came in first time round. And we've got it back at him. And not only that, we've got the team playing. I think there was a hangover after Ange left. I've spoken about this before. I think that was a massive part. The hangover after Ange left, us kind of gradually changing the style. I want to talk about some of the things we have changed because I thought it was so evident at the weekend. But also the poor transfer window last summer. All these things contributed to our shady form, last time round in the first half of the season anyway. But he wasn't having the sloppiness. Let's talk about how we managed to absolutely dismantle this Aberdeen team, who, I'm just going to put it out there, Asim, I made 2 predictions at the beginning of this season. And the first one was that Nicholas Kuhn was going to be a world beater, right? And the second
you're not going to let that one down. You're not going to let that one go.
No, I'm going to hold on to that. And the other one was that Aberdeen could, I never said they could be challenging for the second position. And going into this game, after the league game, right? And I know Kevin Graham was going on about Aberdeen not playing well in the second half and kind of Celtic throwing it away, etc. I was well aware that everybody was focusing. We weren't, but in terms of the media, everybody was going on about how well Aberdeen were doing. Asim. No one was talking about the qualities that Celtic possessed. And I think it was maybe in the drive to Glasgow, and still this was the narrative that I'm hearing on the radio, and I'm thinking, wait a minute here, this is the best possible situation to be in, where nobody seems to be looking at what we're bringing to the table here. And as I was going in, I bumped into a friend of mine who works for Celtic TV, Callum McFadden, and he says, "Oh, what do you think?" And up to that morning, I was probably thinking 3-2 Celtic. Now, I didn't say 4-5 or 6-0 Celtic, but what I did say, we're going to win comfortably today. I think that all the focus has been on Aberdeen, but Celtic do have that quality, and it came out, and we saw it in brilliant technical racing. I don't mind that people are underestimating Celtic's achievements this season.
Yeah, I think, when we speak about Brendan, I think that was why he was so invested in that game, because I think I watched the game back when I got home, and I heard Michael Stewart saying, he's never seen Rodgers as animated in a game and is invested in just the fact, you're right, there was a moment before he fell where he almost dummied to kick the ball and didn't, but again, I think he was frustrated at it wasn't even, to be fair, I don't even think we were that sloppy, but it just shows you his demands and his standards at that point. And I think it kind of eats into the point that you're making. There was all the chat has been about Aberdeen, and you know what? They've been brilliant in terms of and Aberdeen's kind of expectations and the run they've been on, but nobody's been really singing our praises about how good a start to the season we've had. Other than that one blip against Dortmund, we've had a fantastic start to the season, not only in terms of results. You look at the Champions League, 4 points out of 9. Going to Atalanta, getting the draw, the 5-1 at home to Bratislava. Just it's been a brilliant start to the season, and I think the league game really annoyed Brendan where we dropped points against Aberdeen, because I think you could tell in the aftermath of that game should have been just as comfortable. We were 2 up, could have been 3 before half time, and it would have been a similar kind of outcome potentially. But we slacked in that game, and Aberdeen, to their credit, took full advantage. But again, after that, all the narrative has been about Aberdeen, and that's fine. But I think Brendan and the players really, really wanted to put that right on Saturday. And that's why even at 3-0, I think he wanted us to fully put our hands on their throats and go for it and make sure that we don't just slack off and the game peters out into a 3-0 victory. He wanted us to keep going. It reminds me of a game I remember, Rodgers' first season, the Invincible season. We drew 2 each, I think, at Inverness. And it was the first drop points. And I think that game really annoyed him for the rest of the season, because he felt it was a missed opportunity and really sloppy. And I think that Aberdeen game really annoyed him a couple of weeks ago. and I think that's why he was the way he was at the weekend. And it was the second half. I felt like we were playing against 10 men. That's how good we were. We just did not give them a sniff. Constantly moving the ball side to side. It was, like I said, it was perfection and the perfect build up going into what's a huge game on Tuesday as well, which we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to have to speak about that because, again, like you said at the top of the show, we go in with a real bounce. We know that we're on great form. I don't think Celtic were getting the credit for that. It's almost like this whole thing where if you don't do well in Europe, they're ready to pounce on you. I seen when you get the job done domestically, they then use the fact that, it's all budgets.
It's like budget. You can't win. Honestly, that's the way I feel with the media sometimes. You cannot win. If we win narrowly or struggle to win a domestic game, it's going to be there's going to be critics about that. If we win handsomely in a domestic game, you've got your Ewan Murrays and co coming out straight away talking about, why are you celebrating that? Look at the budget difference. And then when we go into Europe, exactly the same thing. The only time we'll ever get credit is if we punch above our weight in Europe and beat a team that we're not supposed to. But you have to get credit for what we're doing domestically. It's not easy. You look at other teams across different leagues with similar kind of structures in Europe, and it's not always the case. For us to be as dominant as we have been, playing the football that we have been, we've got to applaud that. And I think sometimes the media is you're right. They're far too quick to find a negative, far too quick to criticise and not give credit where it's due.
No, you're spot on, and I think when we're looking at the Celtic performances, and we look at every nuance of performance, what's happening in terms of speculation in and around the club, be that transfers or kit deals or tartan home kits. We will talk about it, and often we will disagree, and often we'll criticise certain elements of it. But today, I've got to say it again, and I said it at the very beginning, this is a positive show. There's one or two wee bits probably that we'll talk about that might not be all singing, all dancing, but we've just beat Aberdeen 6-0, a team that at this moment in time have shown at this stage of the season that they're the second force in Scotland this season. And of course, the draw wasn't made. We found out yesterday that we'll be facing Rangers in the final, Acsom. And this is a big thing for me. I remember the game where we were beating Rangers 5-0 after 50 odd minutes, and we didn't have that real ruthless edge to make it 7 or 8 and start smashing records left, right, and centre, right? Because I'm a football fan, that's what I want to do. No mercy. Yeah. The ruthlessness is there, absolutely no mercy. This Aberdeen game, it took us about half an hour to score the first goal, not quite half an hour, and then we go 5-0 up with half an hour to go. So it could have been even worse.
Even more.
It could have been even worse. And if we were playing against a lesser opposition on Saturday, well, and we turn up like we did on Saturday, then I'll tell you what, it's a scary proposition. Now, we're going to be talking about some of the performances, the individual performances. We've touched a wee bit on Brendan Rodgers there as well. And I'm going to, as we do very often, bring Jungle Lion up first for the first comment of the afternoon. Savage performance on Saturday. That is a word I would use. It was savage. JP Walker on the X channel. Authority well and truly stamped with this dominant win. And then we've got a point coming in from Stephen Sloan, a long-time commenter on Acsom, who says, the last time Celtic had more trophies than Rangers, asterisk, footnote, both versions of said club, was in 1938. At the moment, both teams have 118 trophies each. Next month, we can win the League Cup and have more trophies than them for the first time in 86 years. Now, I get it. I know a lot of fans count the trophies and all that. I'm just focused on Celtic. I'm just focused on Celtic when it comes to this. I can never remember anybody talking in terms of 55 titles, for example, right? This only became a thing because the Rangers fans wanted to claim ownership of both sets of trophies. That's the only reason 55 existed, right? So the only time I ever remember talking about a number of cup wins or trophy wins was when we're talking about the 1 star, because it means more than anything else because we've won the European Cup. But I do know that Celtic fans are looking at this, and in the mainstream media, some Celtic fans in the mainstream media are doing it as a head-to-head. because I think it just adds a narrative to the game, I guess, come December.
Yeah.
December 15th, by the way, my birthday, so it'd be a nice birthday gift. And to be honest with you, I'm not that interested. I'm not that interested because see this world's most famous, successful football club and all that. It was all a myth anyway. So I'm not that bothered, to be honest with you, Acsom.
I'm in the same camp as you. To be fair, I've never bothered with it. Never really paid much attention to it. They've made it a thing, and you know what? For the banter and for the laugh and to get it right up them, it'll be brilliant to overtake them because they've made it a thing.
Yeah.
So you know, at the time, of course, we're all going to milk it, and let's hope we do it. But generally, you're right. It's not something Celtic have ever, made a big deal out of, and it's just ironic that them who've been singing and dancing about it for so long are about to get it overtaken by us, hopefully. So yeah, similar to you in that respect. It's not something I majorly pay attention to, but it will be great for the content at the time should we do it.
Well, this is a thing. Great for the content indeed. And today's tagline is indeed a reference to the Green Brigade banner at the weekend in relation to the Aurora Borealis, or as we know them more commonly, the Northern Lights. And we did dim them at the weekend. Magnet 67, afternoon from sunny Basra. Acsom team actually and strangely happy New Rangers got to the final. No room for complacency, but if we can hit the semi-levels, we will mould them. That's where I was getting to with that point. I do think so far this season Aberdeen are a harder opponent than what Rangers have been, and if we put in a performance like we did against Aberdeen at the weekend, against anybody in Scottish football, we will maul them, as he says there. And if we put in a performance like that on Tuesday night, Acsom, what do you get? What do you get? Because it was, I'm not even going to say it was cavalier insofar as that sounds weird when you've scored 6 goals. But defensively, we were sound. You look at the defensive work of Maeda, Kuhn, Hatate, Engels, so beyond the back five, if you like, the defensive work as a team was really sound. We weren't too cavalier at the weekend.
No, it was controlled. I thought it was very controlled. It was, I can't remember a chance Aberdeen had. One header. I think that was it in the second half. Mm-hmm. But we nullified their threat. Fair play to the manager. I think he identified the threats they had at Celtic Park and addressed it. And he talked about that after the game as to his decision making, as to why he chose Trusty to start this game was his added kind of pace and athleticism. So brilliant. And in terms of even the likes of Arne Engels, I thought his power of running that he was putting in, you really seen that in full force, especially when you're at the game. The amount of tracking he's doing. 1 minute he's making tackles in our own half, and then he's the one charging up down the right wing. Yeah. So I really, you really see what he can bring to the table when he's on form. So that was good to see. I mentioned Rio Hatate was one of his best performances in a long time as well. So we just feel like we're getting a lot of the players on form at the right time. In terms of what it means for Tuesday, I'm going to go into it with caution this time. We all went into the Dortmund game full of confidence, and as you do, we're football fans. If you're off the back of the start of the season that we've had, and you've just won 6-0 at that time against St Johnstone, obviously we're going to feel confident. We got a bit of a reality check, and I think Tuesday's going to be a great test because Atalanta was brilliant, in terms of the performance. A really resilient, defensive, backs to the wall, organised performance. We still want to see obviously more from Celtic going forward in that kind of game. But that will come. I think that's the next step. Now we've got Leipzig, who are equally as good as, if not better than Dortmund, probably. You look at I know their Champions League record's not been good, but you look at who they've played. They're second in Bundesliga. They only just lost their first game of the season at the weekend. These guys are they're a team that are going to be in the knockout phases normally most seasons of the Champions League. So we cannot think just because we beat Aberdeen 6-0, who have had a good start to the season, the levels go up a massive notch again. I think the Celtic Park factor could be brilliant. We've had a good few games now in the Champions League. You look at last season, all 3 performances were pretty good in the Champions League at home. And then we obviously the Bratislava one, but again, you factored in the opposition. If we can put in something similar to the Atletico Madrid home game last season, that kind of performance will get us a result, I think, But I think we have to be careful not to. I think we're going to have to be patient, Paul John, on Tuesday. I think as a fan base as well, because they're coming here knowing they need to win. So it might be a case of us again using some of the tactics we used in Bergamo, and that requires patience from the fan base, because it might not be a gung ho type performance, but you just want to see us have that mixed balance of tight at the back but still being a threat on the counter.
Yeah, without a doubt. And this is a big thing, because we have seen both sides of Celtic this season. We have seen us absolutely dismantling teams like we did at the weekend. But then you use that example against Atalanta, where we've gone out there and it was a brilliant, disciplined, defensive performance. And not just by the back four and Kasper Schmeichel, but like we'll get on to talk about, the likes of Engels. His defensive work was outstanding at the weekend. And I think Kuhn is looking across the park at Maeda, and I think he's replicating a lot of that kind of defensive quality that we're seeing on the left. We're now seeing it on the right hand side, and we'll get to Kuhn, because what a player he has turned out to be, incidentally. Again, it's a big night for him, I think. Kuhn, we'll start off with him, because after the game we were all chatting, who's your man of the match? It's one of the ones I see. It could have been one and a half a dozen players. I'm giving it to Kuhn. A, because I tipped him this season and I'm going to back my tip all the way. And B, he was unstoppable. Now, going into the game, I had often said this. He had scored or assisted every 60 seconds in a Celtic jersey, every 60 minutes rather, in a Celtic jersey this season. He goes out there, he scores a goal, and I'm giving him 2 assists as well, just to make him look as good as possible. That's 3. You're adding on to this incredible stat that he already has. But again, the defensive work. One thing that really annoyed me, however, is the amount of times he was taken out. He was absolutely taken out. And on 2 occasions, the move ended up in a goal. And I think that that is probably why the Aberdeen player didn't get picked up on it, which it shouldn't happen. But he was limping. He was limping for quite a bit of the game, I see. And I just think he's now become a target because he's so dangerous.
I was screaming for him to come off. I think once we got the 4th, I was like, we need to, because he's that important to us right now. He's a player that gets you off your seat like nobody has since Jota, really, and he's adding the same number of contributions now. If he can pull this off over the course of a full season and show that consistency, that's what we've been crying out for. And right now, he's getting. Do you know what I really think is an underrated part of his game? His strength. Like, how when he first came in, they said he lost so much weight, and that you can see why that really impacted his game, because I feel not only when he's on the ball, he looks strong and he can barge people over, even just when he chases back. And I've seen it in a number of games now. He's got a really good upper body strength. He's got power in his running now, goals, assists. He's bringing everything to the game. We spoke about it. I think you mentioned as well the Dortmund game, which was the kind of disappointment he didn't show up in that game, but the whole team was guilty of that. He's now. I thought he was really good in Atalanta. Maybe not in the way that we're accustomed to seeing, but he put in a shift, and again was our probably most brightest spark going forward. He'll be itching to get on Tuesday, and just again, because it's against his countrymen. He's had a previous spell at Leipzig. He can't be going into it in any more bigger confidence and on a high as he is. And if he carries that kind of run of form, he's our biggest threat. And you just hope he can pull a kind of similar performance. But I'm really enjoying watching him play. And you're right, he does get targeted, but it's because he's so good. Opposition teams know that he's our main threat now. And I was saying as soon as we went to 4-0, I was like, even at 3-0, I was like, we need to get him rested up, because I think he's the only one of our wide players that has that creativity to that extent. Dyson was back to his back to being Dyson, wasn't it? He scored a hat trick and then he shanked one over did his usual, which ended up neither me in the stands for one of his crosses in the second half. But that's much more like it from Dyson too. So the 2 of them, when they're on form, it's some attack, but we just hope they can bring it on Tuesday as well.
The interesting thing for me is how often did we bemoan the lack of quality on the wings last season? We were talking about it all the time last season, and we're now looking at it, and it's like one of the strongest areas of our team.
I think the starting 2 are still my worry. It's still my position that I want us to address as soon as possible in January, because I think you take any of those 2 out, and it's a big drop off. As much as I'm a fan of James Forrest, and I like how he's rejuvenated his kind of career in the last wee while, and since the end of last year, but I still feel that's an area that you want another Kuhn-esque type of player to be in the squad and available as well. So yeah, the starting two are strong, but beyond that is still somewhere I'd look to address.
I totally agree with that. I think if, and it's not listen, this is a positive show today. It's not an opportunity to have a dig at anybody, but if we can move on, even Palma and Yang, and bring in one player of the quality you're describing there, our squad is so much, even though you're cutting the numbers, our squad is so much stronger. And similarly, I think the same about Welsh and Nawrocki. If you can move them on and bring in another player who's pushing for a jersey at the back, brilliant.
Well, you speak about strong squad. Nothing symbolises that more than the selection headache Rodgers must have had at the weekend and will have going into Tuesday, because there's two areas of the park now where I'm pretty happy, and that's centre backs.
Are we talking back? Team America now? Is it? Is that the starting up centre backs?
I thought, look, it's a sensitive topic, because there are a lot of people here who don't like to hear anything that suggests that what it was harsh on Scales. I agree. He's been so consistent this season. I think he's upped his levels from last season. I think he's a guy that, you know what, if you said to me he's playing tomorrow night, totally happy with it. That may not have been the case all the time last season, but he has excelled in certain big games especially. But what we've always asked for is competition for places, healthy competition for places. Defenders, or not just defenders, because I think the same in midfield now. We've now got a selection of players that the manager could pick any group of, whether it's three in the middle or your back two, and you're happy with any of the options. And I think what he did was he looked at the combination and the characteristics of the different defenders we had available, and he picked what he felt was right for that game, and it worked. And it may work again in midweek. That's time will tell. But I just think it's not a dig. It's not us, belittling anything about Scales. But yes, for me, it's a team I wanted for Saturday, and I think Trusty just looks so comfortable playing the ball out when he's on his favoured left side. I think his passing is something that really speeds up the way we progress the game. And then you've got Carter Vickers, who, let's be honest, regardless of his injury problems, when he plays, he's a colossus. He's he's too good. So I'm going to have him in there every time. But they're all going to get their game time. We've got an Arsenal pitch next week. Carter Vickers may drop out. Scales may come back in. They're all going to be contributing. They're all going to be crucial, and that's what we've wanted: healthy competition for places. And I think the same can be said for midfield and potentially left back as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about the way that we've kind of blended as there's partnerships in the team. I've spoken previously about, on the right hand side with Alistair Johnston, Nicholas Kuhn, and Arnie Engels, right on the right hand side. Now there's a triangle there, a diamond rather, or both. And no, it's definitely a triangle. And they marry up so well down the right hand side. And I was looking on the left hand side thinking we didn't have the same dynamic there. At the weekend we did. Rio Atati, Alex Baye, and Dyson Maeda, they were just as strong and just, for me, as impressive as the right-hand side. And that's something about relationships that can only come with games. You've mentioned about Trusty there. By the way, talking about Carter Vickers being a colossus, there were 9 Aberdeen players in the 6-yard box when he rose to header the opening goal in. Right, it's not like it was on a plate. It was a brilliant ball, and here's my third prediction: Arnie Engels will score from a corner this season. That's my third prediction.
Some whip he's got on those crosses, isn't he?
Oh, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But Carter Vickers done so well to get on the end of that, and he's just brilliant. His strength is incredible. Trusty, I think the things that really stand out for me, the first one's his pace, very, very, and it's great recovery pace as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the second one. And again, we were talking about this. I think we got into the habit as a team of the out ball for your centre halves always being your inverted fullback. So if you're playing on the left hand side of the defence, your out ball was generally Taylor.
Yeah.
But what he's done a lot, and it was something that Marichien's done a lot under. He did this a hell of a lot.
Infield pass.
Absolutely, and he does it so well. I don't think Ange wanted us to do that. It looks as though Brendan's keen on us doing it, and Trusty does it so well.
I love it when that comes off, though, because it automatically eliminates the press or the lines, and it gives your midfield a chance to face forward, and you're already attacking. You're right. I've noticed Trusty do that a few times. It's like just around the corner in the midfield. It's not too risky, because it's usually, it comes with risk naturally, but I think the reward is brilliant when you can do it. and he trusts himself to do it. It was funny. I watched an interview with him, and Scales did some kind of interview on Celtic TV last week where they were just talking. It was like they were asked questions, and they were just talking about, is it easier for centre backs to play centre forward or centre forwards to play centre backs or something? And Trusty was just straight out back in his confidence. He goes, I can play centre forward, no problem. And Scales was like, oh, it's not as easy. But you can just tell he's a guy who backs himself. He's played in numerous positions. His pace and, like you said, his passing ability, I think, is something that Rodgers really values as well. So, and we're going to be playing against Lewis Openda tomorrow night, who's rapid. So again, that's why I think he might favour Trusty there. But yeah, you're right. He's grown into it. I thought Atalanta was his best game, and you can just see since then we've had another 3 clean sheets in a row. So I think that's 4 in a row we've had in the space of a couple of weeks. So fair play to him, because there were doubters when he first came in, and then even after a few performances, people were unsure. But it just shows you, like we've been saying for a while now, and ourselves included, you just need to give players a bit of time sometimes.
Yeah, and again, I always go back to this. We're football fans, and you can have knee-jerk reactions, you can have emotional takes, all of these things. But once the dust is settled, you're absolutely spot on with that. Kasper Schmeichel didn't have much to do at the weekend, but one thing I did notice about him is he made his first save. Was it 55 minutes before he makes his first proper save? And instantly he turned defence to attack, and it was a pass. He basically like volleyed the ball right up the left wing, and it was a precision pass. I love Joe Hart. Joe Hart couldn't do that. That wasn't part of his game, I seem. So I think that all these things, that they're small margins, but they're making a huge difference. What I always want to see, I want the opponent to be facing their own goal. The classic counter, get them on the back. And so often last season, we didn't have that situation. We always faced 2 blocks of like 4 or 5 opponents, and we just couldn't unlock them. How often at the weekend did we have them chasing back to the robot? Because it was so quick. It was a tempo. But the defence and Schmeichel are a massive part of that.
Yeah, Schmeichel's distribution, honestly, is night and not. Again, I love Joe Hart, but it is night and day in terms of the quality and distribution. That's all I'm saying there. Because again, no critics on the Hart there, but I just love how he plays that chip ball around the corner. Sometimes he can play it through the middle, which gets us on the attack. He's got that volley in him as well to get us going long, and I think especially in Europe, that's going to be key. Because we're going to be getting pressed by Leipzig. They're going to come gung ho at us at times, and just having that assurance and confidence to be able to do that, and if it comes off, could make a massive difference into how that game goes. Because I think it could be one hell of an open game, and just being able to break their press at times with Schmeichel's ability on the ball, like we mentioned, Trusty there being able to do what he does. I just think it will get us on the front foot, and that's something we've struggled with. I think Leipzig's a good example of where it didn't work a couple of years ago in Germany. I remember Joe Hart made an error in that game. We were at 1 each at the time, I think. They'd scored a goal. It was offside. Straight away we gave them a gift, and they went 2-1 up. So I think that is something that Rodgers really wants this team to be able to do, and I think the additions of Schmeichel and Trusty, Vi as well. Greg Taylor's good on the ball, so I think again I'll be interested to see. That's the one area I'm not sure who he's going to go with. I think he might stick with Vi again, because I thought he was brilliant. He's getting better and better. He's got everything to his game. He's obviously still learning. He's a young lad, but I think he's getting better as we go. So that's the one I'm unsure about, but I think he might stick with him.
Well, let's talk about the fullbacks then. You've led us on to that. Before we do it, hopefully we won't know the team until it's officially announced. This is something that we spoke about last week on the show, and the fact that there is a leak. There is a leak from Celtic Football Club, and it's so disappointing. And we know that it's happened in the past. And I was talking to a couple of my pals about this. How does it happen? Is it sinister, or is it just people who think they can trust X, Y, or Z? Next thing you know, that person thinks they can trust, and then once it's on WhatsApp, it's just like it's out there, and you're not getting it back in. The genie's out the bottle. It's so frustrating, and it was actually called out by Brendan after the game, to the point where even when I get a team, I don't share it. I just think, A, you're going to look daft when it's not right, and B, what if it is right? Let's keep it, in the house here.
Yeah.
How do you smoke it out though, Asim? obviously there's certain ways whereby once it's on WhatsApp, you cannot find the originating message.
No.
You don't know who sent the original, message. But again, it's one of the things you can warn your group, you can educate your group. If it keeps happening, then I think it's a wee bit more sinister. Then I think it's somebody who's actually got ulterior
Bad
motives in
intentions.
some way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been 4 or 5 games now where I remember going into the Atalanta game, there was chat of someone saying he does going to be starting tonight. I can't remember where I seen it, probably on X, and lo and behold, he did start that one. But I don't think it's sinister personally at this stage. You're right. If this carries on now that the manager's literally called it out and spoke about it, then yes. But I'm more inclined to think it is just someone wanting a wee ego boost. Oh, I've got the team news, and wanting the likes on Facebook and social media and whatever. I think it's more of that kind of thing. But I thought Rodgers spoke very well about it when he was asked at the press conference after the game, how much it's benefited him in the past where there's been a leak about the opponent's team,
Yeah.
and it totally makes sense. If you know what the other team's planning to do or the lineup, you can prepare accordingly rather than last minute scrambling about. Likewise, he also mentioned, though, regardless, it's one thing knowing the team. When you come up against a Celtic on form like that, it's difficult to do anything about it. But yeah, it needs to be addressed, and the proof will be in the pudding tomorrow, because yeah, what's anyone getting out of that other than, like you said, a bit of an ego boost, and then if it isn't the case, then you're right. Maybe it is something sinister. It's maybe someone that's wanting to damage the team. But I'd like to think not. We'll see tomorrow, I guess.
Well, as Brendan says, they are not a Celtic supporter.
Yeah.
I love Brendan, and the
Well, I
thing
was
is,
going to say, you said how'd you eke it out? This happened a few years ago. I'm pretty
Mhm,
sure
mhm,
under Lennon's time there used to be lots of leaks of team
yeah,
news, and then there started being dummy team news. So it was like fake news, like so Sorrow starting when everyone was like, "Yeah, Sorrow starting," and then it would come out and he wouldn't be starting, for example. And I don't know if that was one way that I think it was under Lennon that they maybe tried to kind of smoke it out and find out if that's the case. So who knows? But that's an option.
that would be a tactic. If you've got, there's a couple of people you suspect might be
Yeah,
doing it.
that's if you suspect someone.
You throw them a wee dodgy, and then if it goes out, you know that it's been leaked by them. Fullbacks, then, right? I'm in agreement with you with regards to the left back. I view Greg Taylor as the first choice. I think Alex Bailly has done brilliantly. I really do. But there was comments. I mean, where Brendan Rodgers has ended up on his backside, it was because Bailly and Rio basically lost the ball between the two of them. And then after the game, Brendan was talking about he brought Taylor on to tidy things up. And I'm wondering if he's happy enough with the way that Bailly is retaining the ball. And that would probably lead me to say, well, you know what? I think Taylor might well start on Tuesday night. And Taylor comes in. He is different. He is a different type of player, but he was really, in terms of retaining the ball and possession and all that kind of stuff, he was so disciplined when he came in. And I like the fact that he brings an experience to the table as well. And I'm not saying you can't perform, because Engel starts for me on Tuesday night and he's roughly the same age as Bailly.
Yeah.
But he brings an assuredness to the Celtic side. And I think going into the Champions League, you need that as well, Asim. I think that's huge.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't kind of thought of that in that sense. That Taylor, you're right. He's been around the block. He knows these big nights at Celtic Park. The Champions League, the anxiety that can sometimes come when we're giving the ball away and stuff like that. And I feel like that's something he's really comfortable at, in terms of for all his, well, not for all his flaws, but for some of the flaws that he's been exposed in Europe in the past. I think one thing is he is reasonably good on the ball, even under pressure. I feel like he retains possession, and Tuesday night's going to be a night where we're going to have to weather storms. We're going to come under pressure. We're going to have to be good on the ball. Vi, I think, is good on the ball, but you're right. Maybe just that excitedness and youthful exuberance at times might catch him out. But two great options to have. You're right, his word choice is interesting. Came on to tidy things up. I think Vi was involved in one of the incidents in the first half where Rodgers maybe kicked the ball on the pitch. I think it might have been him and Maida on that side. So yeah, he's got a headache, a good headache, but he might stick to the tried and trusted Greg Taylor, and I'll have no qualms with that. I think either way he goes, you've got an able deputy to come on, and we can trust Taylor. You'd like to think. Let's hope so. Anyway, I know Europe is one of the areas where he has been exposed at times. Let's hope tomorrow again he can bring out one of his better performances if he is to start.
When I was looking at the threat that Aberdeen posed at the weekend, and probably from the first game as well, they did try to, obviously when Scales was playing, they tried to split the two centre halves, and they did that extremely well at Celtic Park in the league game. They didn't really have that option because I think that Trusty's recovery speed's too good for it. But what they continually try to do is they try to win free kicks in and around your box. It's all about set pieces, corners, long throw-ins. But the one thing out of all that, because that to me is pretty boring, but I can see why a team would do it because they don't have as strong a starting 11 as we do. The one thing that I don't like about them, I feel as though they're a bunch of hammer throwers, by the way, and Shinnie is guilty of it.
Yeah.
And Nielsen, who I've already mentioned. I just
Nielsen
thought
could have been sent off at Celtic Park. It took him I don't know. I think he did eventually get a booking, but he could have easily had one much earlier. Look, I like their manager. I liked how he fronted things up at the end of the game, unlike certain other managers. He wasn't making excuses. He came out and held his hand up, just beaten by a much better opponent on the day, and obviously in general. But I've watched some of their games. I don't think it's something I've noticed other than the two games against us. Particularly, I didn't see the midweek game against Rangers, so maybe in certain games they're a bit more extra physical. But yeah, I felt they were leaving a lot of late challenges on us. Whether that's just because we were too quick for them, speed of thought, speed of movement, or it was a tactic, I don't know. I'd like to think not, given what I like about their manager at the point. But you're right, Shinnie's always struck me as that kind of guy. Not the most able footballer technically, but makes up, tries to make up for it with physicality and running and stuff. So yeah, I didn't like that either. But again, we just showed that we were far too good for them, and that's the thing. When we're playing against domestic opposition, a lot of the time that's what these teams resort to or try to do. We just have to be good enough to cut and hope we get the protection from the referees. That's the key as well. You don't want to allow these guys just to not get bookings and keep doing it, and that's what then leads to injuries as well.
The big thing for me, again, no labouring this because it wasn't a massive part of the day. Obviously, we've mentioned the booking of Brendan Rodgers, which is bizarre when you see some of the tackles that were going in and being allowed to. Basically, for me, the biggest issue I had with Aberdeen is that they were allowed continuous tackles, late tackles without a booking, and then McGregor makes his first and he gets booked. And it's not the first time this season I've seen that.
Wasn't even a foul?
No, it wasn't even a foul. And I feel that, I don't know what it is, but McGregor, I'm going to check how many bookings he's had this season. And they've been similar. I can think of 2 or 3 occasions this season I've seen where tackles are flying in, they're late, they're leaving things in. Shinnie leads with his forearm all the time in the back of Rio attack, all this stuff, no booking. Yeah. The minute McGregor makes a tackle of sorts and he's in the book, and he was astonished, angry, the whole thing, and all this nonsense as well. I thought we'd got away with this, from this, because we've seen that a couple of times from the Aberdeen players, and not for me. I rewatched the game this morning, Asim, and I've got to say, you're talking about other managers. Peter Grant got stuck right in a Clermont about toenails. If you've not watched it, it's worth it just for Granty giving him it tight. And Peter Grant will be joining us on stage with some of the other centenary boys, Roy Aitken, Pat Bonner. This is my era, a wee bit before your time, Asim. I understand, I appreciate. But this was my introduction to actually going to the games, 87, 88. We win. It's a centenary season, and we've got 3 of the heroes on a stage at the same time. Tickets are going fast, but they are available underneath this video. The ticket link is underneath, so come along.
It's going to be a bit of an Acsom Christmas night out as well.
It's got to be.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
And if there's enough of us there, I say maybe I'll get you on the stage as well. Who knows? Who knows what might happen? Before we get stuck back into the comments, we've spoken about the life.
Things are a bit fiery in the comments, I've noticed. I don't know if it's my background today, but there's been a lot of chat about the smoke and the pyro. I think it's rubbed a few people up the wrong way.
It divides opinion. It really does. And I know that, there's people at games who will be affected by the smoke.
Yeah.
There'll be people with conditions who will be affected by the smoke. Totally get it. But I'm kind of on the side of the argument that Kevin Graham argues, in that there's a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
Did I call it cold pyro, whereby you can actually use pyro that will not affect other bystanders in a similar way. It will not affect their breathing.
Was it Kevin McCluskey that said that? I think it might have been Kevin who says in Hungary, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but he says in European grounds it's all coordinated, organised. They talk to the authorities. It's all done safely.
Mm-hmm.
Surely there's a way that we can have conversations around doing it in a more safer or manner that's not impacting people, as you said, stuff like the cold pyro, because I do think it adds to an occasion in terms of the look, and provided there's no 15-minute delays due to VAR lines not being able to be drawn. But it's something that will divide opinion, and but let's just hope that we don't get any kind of further punishments, because it'd be nothing worse than having a stand closure or something like that.
No, without a doubt. And if there is a better way, let's talk about it. Let's engage. That's what it's all about. Let's talk also about Alistair Johnston. What a warrior this player has turned out to be. And when you watch the goal that he's credited with having the assist, just concentrate on that run, Asim. It's like he's in his own lane, and everything's happening around about him, and he just continually runs. But it just shows you the synergy that we've got at the moment, particularly down the right, I think, where he knows where that ball's going to end up, and he's gambled on it. And if he doesn't get it, he's about 100 yards out of position, but he does get it, and then the ball's brilliant, and Maida completes his hat-trick. I think Johnston's having a tremendous season.
Yeah, he's a future captain for me. If he stays long enough, I think he's got all the attributes, all the characteristics he's already exudes kind of leadership skills on the pitch. I feel even when you hear him talk, he seems like he's someone who's well liked within the dressing room. Just gets what it means to be playing for such a big club. So everything about him, and he's having a fantastic season. Goals, assists. That goal, I think must have been over 20, near 30 passes probably in the build-up. It was beautiful, and this Bernardo's wee flick at the end. Bernardo again came on, did well. We've just got everyone really buzzing right now. But yeah, Alistair Johnston, he's. I remember when he first came in, I thought, because we had Juranovic previously, and people were like, "Oh, is he as good going forward as Juranovic?" And he's always to me been better defensively. But now you're seeing his attributes getting into the right areas for goals, his crossing ability. He's just a very good footballer, all round. He's got a bit of everything about him. And I'm again another player that you just really enjoy watching, and he works so well with Kuhn. What a dynamic duo they are on that right side.
Yeah, Henry Melarsson reminds us, was it a wee cleaner for Lenny's time? That was, remember the recruitment meeting? Yeah, the recruitment meeting, 2 pages of targets, and somebody digs them out a bin, and before you know it, they're all over the internet. Yes, I do remember that well, because I'm pretty sure Scott McTominay was on that list, now starting for Napoli, who Atalanta defeated quite comfortably.
Just the list of potential signings.
Yeah.
Who else was on there? There was a few random. Was Joe Aribo on there?
Joe Aribo was in there, definitely. It'd be interesting to look back on them, actually. See which ones got away. Yeah, dig it out. Studs Lanigan, do what Colleen Rooney did to catch Ratifa. I'm still unsure if that really happened or if it was part of a reality TV show. I don't know, Studs. And on the point of the left back, Monty is starting to really enjoy Baye. He fits into the attacking style. Celtic follower says that he's never really been a Taylor fan. Taylor all day for me, says Chilpill. It's one of the ones that I'm a bit like yourself in regards to the team tomorrow. If I see either or, I can understand why. It's one of the ones where if Baye starts, I'm not thinking there's your weak link.
Yeah.
And Taylor, part of that issue, as much of a skills fan as I am, part of that issue was we were being targeted on that left side with the long ball at the back post.
Nice.
And once you've got Trusty in there, then is it such a big issue? Probably not. So either or, I would be happy with them. Moving into the midfield, big chat, big discussion around who should be starting. Cal McGregor, if it starts, and that's exactly what happened at the weekend. Solid performance by the captain. And I think that you then look at Engels and you look at maybe his performances have been a wee bit underappreciated. I think the Atalanta one's a good example of it, where there wasn't a moment in the game, I seen, where you think, oh, Engels is a player. but over the entirety of the performance, the work defensively has been brilliant. But he comes away with 2 assists at the weekend. Comes away with 2 assists, one from the corner and one where he tries it back heel, doesn't come off, but he slides in and he manages to get the ball out wide to Kuhn. For me, that's the strongest 3. I know Bernardo's come in and he's done well. The best of all 3 of them, though, Rio Hatate. What a game!
When Rio plays like that, you can't leave him out. That when he plays like that, he's up there with the best midfielder in the country. You know, alongside McGregor. He's that was as good and confident and just an all round complete performance from Rio, and I've seen him quite a long time. You know, he was shielding the ball brilliantly. He was turning defense into attack. He was getting back, making challenges. That's the Rio that we know he's capable of, and if he can pull that off consistently, that midfield spot's his. You know, you never take him out of the team. The thing that we've just not seen maybe is that kind of consistency from him. But you know, I was thoroughly enjoying his performance. And you're right, midfield's been an area that we've discussed. And you know, about a week ago, we'd have all probably had different opinions as to what the midfield 3 would be. But I think Rio and the performance of Engels and Callum's going to play if he's fit. That to me, as much as I absolutely rate Bernardo, and again, you know, comes on, does well. For me, that's a 3 because Rio's the one out of the midfield that can do that pack pass that everyone speaks about. You know, that can eliminate defenders, can create for us. He's just got a bit of that extra magic that I think we might need on big nights. So I remember before the Bratislava game, I didn't have Rio on my team. But his performance at the weekend, absolutely, he's nailed on for me. So yeah, I think it will be those 3 again, just because of Engels' kind of running power, McGregor and Rio. You mentioned about the fullback area. I think Leipzig, they play like a 4-2-2-2 formation. So I don't know if their kind of main attacking threat, Xavi Simons, is injured. So I wonder if, you know, that kind of worry that we have about Taylor getting exploited with height and stuff like that won't be as much of an issue. They'll kind of play more centrally. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we combat that. But yeah, Rio Tati, what a performance!
Brilliant performance. Thank you, every single one of you, for tuning in. We're sitting at around 1,400 on the live stream. And if you haven't done so already, get yourself subscribing to A Celtic State of Mind. Why don't you do that? Treat yourself. It's all free. And I think we're heading towards some kind of milestone. Let me just check the figures while we're online. We're not that far off 30,000 subscribers, Asim. I'm actually going to check the figure here. Obviously, we have a great team of contributors all in. We've got about 30 on the chat who come and go in terms of their availability. And then we do the live events. So if you want to come and see the whites of our eyes, then you can come and see us live. Great nights coming up with Aitken, Grant and Bonner, and also one with John Collins at Gracie. So I'm just looking at the subs. At the moment, we are 12 away from hitting 30,000. Just 12.
That can be done by the end of this show.
That can be done in the next 7 minutes, right? If you're watching the show and you don't subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Get us up to 30,000. Why not? Like the video. And we are enjoying, of course, the new show on a Friday night. And just so that everybody understands what the whole workings of that show is, if you go right back to 2017, A Celtic State of Mind was set up by myself, and Kevin Graham spoke to me in the very, very early days about what it was. What is A Celtic State of Mind? And we spoke long and hard about it. And the guests that we had in the early days weren't necessarily ex-Celtic players, I see. That's an important distinction, because we have always spoken to people from the world of politics, or from the world of movies or film, and which are the same thing, and TV and music and comedy and all these different, any art that you're involved in. If you're a Celtic fan, you're welcome on the show. And that has basically been our template from day one. The live streams that we're having right now, where we can talk about every nuance of who's playing well, who should start tomorrow night. Is it true that Celtic are going to incorporate tartan in their new home strip next season? That happens and is covered every single day. So on a Friday night, you're going to get something a wee bit different. And I know that the minute you start bringing politics into it, Asim, you're going to divide opinion. It's the nature of it. So we had we've had 3 political figures on the show so far. And on Friday night, it was Mick Lynch. And it's an interesting take. I mean, we can have an ex-player on every single week, But I like the variety, and that's what
Yeah.
Acsom has always done. One of our most listened to episodes in the past was with Professor Phil Scraton, who pushed for the Hillsborough inquiry and unearthed new evidence to allow the inquiry into the Hillsborough tragedy. And we spoke to him on a Celtic State of Mind, and it was one of the most interesting episodes that I think we've ever done. So it doesn't always need to be an obvious guest.
Yeah.
For example, this week, Friday night, Phil Differ, a comedy genius, a Scottish comedy genius, and he is going to be on the show on Friday night. How are you enjoying the variety of guests, Asim?
The key is in the name, as you say, a Celtic State of Mind. So it doesn't need to be your most obvious link or ex-players. It's just having that variety of people that have some connection with Celtic, and then bringing their own take into the conversation in the chat. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of many of these shows, and I'm learning stuff every time. You know, I'm learning from ex-players who are giving their kind of insight into what it's like to play for Celtic. Then you're learning from musicians who are just talking about their connections and what brought them into the Celtic family. The politics ones I've thoroughly enjoyed. Again, everyone has their own tastes and interests, but from my point of view, politics is always something I've had part of my life and enjoyed. The Bernard Ponsonby one was a personal favourite. Just thought he was brilliant to listen to. Could have sat there for an extra couple of hours.
Yeah.
And then you've got Murdo McLeod. You know, just the footballers give you that side of it. The politics again, it's just fascinating to listen to. And I'm thoroughly enjoying the variety. You had Rose Riley recently, and that was such a popular show as well because again, it's things that I probably didn't know much about. I didn't know her history, her backdrop. So you're learning every week, and you're right. It's not going to be for everyone, but I think the viewing figures will tell you that there are enough people out there enjoying it. There's enough people that want to learn, want to know, and find it fascinating just to get different takes on people's connections with Celtic.
Yeah. And of course, this is Acsom could actually conceivably happen without a special guest in inverted commas, because we could get 3 or 4 Acsom contributors to do a similar show and do a weekly roundup, Asim, and it would be just as enjoyable. But Phil Differ on Friday night. I would throw this out there. So, for example, right, if I got an opportunity to interview Ian Brown, lead singer at the Stone Roses, would I do it? Of course I would. Right, what would I talk about? I would talk to him about probably politics, because Ian Brown has always been at the forefront of speaking his mind and being on the right side of history, actually. When you go back to the song that he recorded back in 2007 with Sinead O'Connor, Illegal Attacks, he is talking about Palestine in that particular song.
Yeah.
So, not a Celtic fan. He's not going to pretend to be a Celtic fan, but I think Celtic fans would enjoy some aspects of his chat. He's been an anti-royal his entire life. Elizabeth, My Dear, on the debut Stone Roses album is all about that. And I think anybody who has watched the Dispatches documentary on Channel 4 who didn't already want to abolish the monarchy might want to do now. Two political people say, well, it's life.
Yeah.
Art, politics, music, football. It goes hand in hand, does it not?
The Phil Differ one, I'm looking forward to that. Is Phil Differ, was it him that kind of started off Only an Excuse back in the days? Because I used to love that show, but growing up, it obviously went downhill kind of in more recent times. But back in the days, that was a staple to watch every kind of New Year's stuff, and some of the comedic genius that was involved there. And obviously he's a big Celtic fan, and I've kind of listened to one of your audio podcasts with him before, and it was a great listen. So thoroughly looking forward to that as well.
The thing with Phil, right, he's the first to admit that Only an Excuse is not what it once was. But I think, when the BBC, for example, in his case, get their hands or control over the original concept, it's always going to lose a wee bit of its kind of indie roots, if you like. But here's a roll call for you. Here's shows that Phil Differ has been involved in one way or another, right? Check this out. And it could just be that he was writing gags for them, or he might have been an executive producer, but this is Phil Differ's roll call. And there's more, by the way. Rab C. Nesbitt, The Baldy Man, Only an Excuse, Spitting Image, Scotch and Rye, Chewing the Fat, Not the 9 o'clock News, Naked Video, City of Lights, Still Game. Wow.
Brilliant. What a selection, isn't it?
He's got the Midas touch. He's got the Midas touch. We've spoken about the midfield. That only leaves the wee man, the wee fella, Kyogo.
Kyogo.
And again,
Big game player.
Big game player. Loves handing. He loves handing. He loves scoring at handing. I think it's an interesting kind of journey he's been on with Brendan, because you look at last season, because he wasn't as prolific and he wasn't getting the same kind of service. Remember the question around, are we playing to his strengths? And Brendan spoke about that. Then this season, there's the announcement, by the way, he's moved to Cabase. He's going to get a transfer. Man City are interested and all this kind of stuff. He's still the number one striker, Acsom.
He is. It's mad when you think about this time last year, the conversations we were having and how different it is, and well done to all involved. But Kyogo, he's big game player. Look, he's not as prolific. He misses a lot. He's always missed. I remember his debut. I was at his debut at home to, not his home debut, at home to Dundee it was, in a 6-0 victory. He scored a hat-trick, and I swear he missed 3 sitters that day as well. So I think missing sometimes easier chances has always been part of his makeup. What he does is deliver on big games. He's still the number one striker. His movement hasn't changed. His movement is still incredible. His off the ball movement. Sometimes we don't maybe utilise it still in terms of putting him in sooner. But the goal, brilliant. I thought I was behind the goals, or the view that you can see from my background. That's where I was sitting. It looked like
your picture? Is that your picture? Oh,
brilliant. So I had a good view, but it looked like he was hitting the bar and over, and I was like, oh no, he's missed it. But brilliantly, it was actually very well taken. Composure, made sure he put it in the place that there's no chance anyone stopping that. And I wouldn't put it past him to add to his Champions League tally. He scored a couple of big ones last season, home to Lazio, home to Atletico Madrid, home to Bratislava this season. I wouldn't put it past him to add to that. So he's still the number one man. And let's hope he's got his finishing boots on. But I won't be on again until after, obviously, the game. What's your take? Do you take a draw? Obviously, I don't mean that in a negative way. I 100% think we can go there and win. But given the position we're in, given the kind of fixtures that are coming up, and just it'll keep that momentum going. But I'd absolutely love for us, because I think that's the one thing that's been missing, a big Champions League win, for against a team that we're not expected to beat. What a takeoff that would be if we could pull this off tomorrow.
Without a doubt. I keep bringing up the graphic of the games that I would have expected us maybe to get something from. And I'm looking at the game on Tuesday night, and I think to myself, if we get a draw, it's absolutely ahead of the expectation I would have had at that stage. I never expected to get anything from Borussia Dortmund. Probably didn't expect anything from Atalanta away. So if we get a draw, I still look at maybe 3 out of the final 4 games as winnable. Mm-hmm. The Villa one being very, very tough. Bruges will be tough as well. But I still think that magic is at 10. Have we decided 10 points is what we're trying to aim for?
10's 99% guaranteed you're going to get through the top 24. I think 9, you've still got a chance. I think it's maybe 2/3, like 60-something%. So that's the aim. And like you said, we've got Young Boys and Bruges still to come at home. Dinamo Zagreb away. So a kinder second half of our fixtures than we had the first 4, I would say. So if we get anything tomorrow, even though it's at home, I think we can be reasonably happy with that. And I think I said it earlier that it's one of those games I can see going either way. It wouldn't surprise me regardless of the outcome. I think we're up against a really good opposition, but we're also in good form, so I can see us maybe winning. But at the same token, it wouldn't absolutely surprise me if they come and do a job on us.
You made a good point. Last season, we had some good performances at home. That seems to be forgotten in amongst the fact that we didn't qualify. We didn't do that well over the piece. But, the Lazio game, very close to going ahead in that game. The 2 each game against Atletico Madrid. And, of course, we got a win against Feyenoord. Is it going to be a famous night tomorrow night at Celtic Park? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to continue the positivity. Without a doubt. Let's go 3-2. There's definitely goals in the game, to use a cliche. One final, let me bring up one final comment, and it's our old pal Kaiser, who says, changed the Midas touch to Midas touch, PJD. Listen, you've given me a tagline for a future show. The reason I didn't use it on today's is when I saw that banner, most people are thinking about the beauty of the Northern Lights. I'm thinking about a band I used to be in the 1990s of the same name. And I thought to myself, I'm going to use that. I'm having that. Oh, yeah, there we go. I will not I won't play you the demos or the videos from back in the day, but we weren't a boy band. That's all I'm saying. Thanks, every single one of you, for getting involved. Get involved further by subscribing to the channel. Get us up to 30,000 before the close of play tonight. We're only 12 short. And once again, Acsom Rabbani, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.